My name is Robert M. Springer Jr., and I'm a retired Army Colonel, 06. Then we got orders to move up to the Yalu River, which was a dividing line between North Korea and Siberia and also China. So we got orders to attack north and clean up what they said were the remnants of the North Korean army. So the infantry company I was with moved out, and we attacked. We were supposed to move to a town called Unsan, which is about 40 miles south of the Yalu River, which we did. And then the company commander, the battalion commander of the battalion I was with, made a decision to send a platoon forward up close to the Yalu River to be a combat outpost. It was a reinforced platoon, and it was headed by a lieutenant named Harry Trollope, and there's another lieutenant with him that was a good friend of mine, and so we went up to this outpost. We couldn't see the Yalu River because it was around a bend, but we weren't supposed to provide a blocking force. We were only supposed to be a warning force in case there was some attack. So we went up there early in the morning, and we got settled on the top of this position, this hill. As I say, it was maybe 5 miles or 10 miles ahead of the main line. And then around 10 o'clock in the morning, Sergeant came over to see me, and he said, Lieutenant, if you look through your binoculars, way in front of us, you'll see people coming out of the mountains. And I did that, and sure enough, there were hundreds of people, Chinese, coming out. They must have been Chinese, coming out of the mountain in military formations, pulling weapons, but they were so small I could hardly see them. But you could make out little specks. So I immediately called for artillery to be placed on these little specks, but I was refused the artillery because the Battalion S3, the people in the headquarters I was talking to, way to the rear of us, said the Chinese were not in the war, and they couldn't be Chinese anyway because the Chinese were on the other side of the Yalu, and so I couldn't have any artillery fire. So they didn't believe me, or they wouldn't accept it. So I couldn't give them artillery support for quite a while. So finally, they said, we're going to send a major from the headquarters up to see if you're really telling the truth, which they did. And it didn't take him long to get to where I was, Major Field. So he came up and he said, yes, he said, you're under attack. And so he finally got permission to fire on these people. But they kept advancing, and before long, I got full massed artillery fire on them, but they kept coming. And finally it was about 600 or 800 yards of us, and the lieutenant said, well, we've done our warning mission, now it's time to retreat and join the main line of resistance. So we did. We went down into a little culvert and managed to escape, all of us. By that time, the Chinese were taking over our positions, and we rejoined the main line of resistance, which was defending Unsan, U-N-S-O-N, Unsan. And the battalion I was in was the 2nd Battalion of the 8th Cavalry Regiment. think I was with George Company. So we rejoined our battalion, and we took some high ground to the left of the road going north. That was the east of the road. And I tried to communicate with the battalion on my left so I could coordinate artillery fire. But there was a huge gap between our positions because we didn't have enough forces to cover the whole area. There was at least a half a mile gap between the two battalions. And so I couldn't work out anything with them. The company commander was down on the road where he shouldn't have been, actually. So along about 7 o'clock in the evening, we started hearing bugle calls from the Chinese, and they were heading toward our positions. And by that time, we brought up 2 tanks from the 70th Tank Battalion, or 3, along the main road to our right, just over the side. And so I could see the tanks on the road there, that close. And we felt pretty good to have the tanks there. But suddenly around 8 o'clock, when it was starting to get dark, one of the tanks exploded because the Chinese had brought up satchel charges and managed to get close to the tanks, and they blew all 3 of them up. And they all caught on fire. And at that time, about the same time, the Chinese were attacking our positions. And so I was calling for artillery fire as fast as they could fire. The barrels must have been red hot by then because of just continual artillery fire that I managed to get the artillery to provide. And then they began attacking our hill. And infantry company commander came to me and he said, I want you to bring the artillery fire down 50 yards in front of our positions because they're attacking our front positions. So I said, I better not do that, sir, because we're firing high angle fire because of the mountains, and we're not that accurate. We could end up by getting artillery in our own positions. And he said, I don't care. He says, we're dug in and they're not. So I said, okay, drop pump 100, fire for effect. And they did. And the artillery shells did hit them on our positions. So after that, and we had some wounded. And so then they said, back off. So this happened continually for a couple hours. We were real hand-to-hand fighting. And then company commanders came to me and he said, Bob, I just got a call from our battalion headquarters. Say they've enveloped us, they've come around behind us. They've got the road, they've got all the passageways, and we're surrounded. And they knocked out the 3rd Battalion, which was to our left, and said we've got orders to try to form small groups and get out the best way we can. And this was late at night. This was about 11 o'clock at night, completely dark. And so we broke down into small groups, and I went with my friend, Lieutenant Al Kendry, who was a classmate of mine from West Point. He's a World War II veteran, so he'd been in the Battle of the Bulge, and so he knew this was a whole story to him. So he led a small group of us through the mountains. We traveled all night, and we started running into stragglers. Fortunately, he had a map and he knew where to go. We were using mountain trails and kept going, and we crossed rivers, had to wade rivers. gradually we picked up more and more stragglers as we went along. And we ran into one roadblock, but we could tell that it was a roadblock because there was so much fighting and noise and artillery and explosions ahead of us. So we went over to the left of the road and got off the road again. We got on the mountain roads finally. Finally, sometime the next morning, after continually climbing and walking very carefully, we finally heard our artillery moving in the distance. And we knew it was our artillery because the Chinese didn't have any. So we just followed the sound of the guns, and eventually we came to our own artillery and got out. But